Once upon a time, there was an old king who had 4 sons. His 4 sons had their eyes on the throne. The king was well aware that his sons did not love him. He knew they were not loyal to him. They admired his power and were all waiting for him to die. The king once invited the 4 princes to dinner. But, before calling them, he sent each of them a gift. On the note, with each gift, it was written that they had to wear whatever was in the gift box. The 4 princes arrived at the palace at the given time. They were all dressed in different colors. The oldest son was wearing blue. The second son was wearing red. The third son was wearing yellow. And the youngest son was wearing green. The king walked into the room where dinner would be served. They all sat down to eat. The king asked each of his sons how they were doing. The princes inquired about the king's health. After dinner, the king took his sons to his favorite garden. He told his sons how much he loved gardening. He told them how much love he grew all of the plants in the garden. After a brief conversation, the king asked each of his sons to show him what they had received in the gift box. The first son told the king that he was gifted a blue dress. The second stated that he was given a red gown. The third son said with a smile that he received what he was wearing, a yellow dress. The youngest son stood silent. The king asked him what was his gift. With a stutter, he said he received a green dress. The king smiled. He knew his youngest son was lying. He sent him an empty gift box. But he did not ask him if he was lying. The youngest son, on the other hand, suspected he had received an empty gift box by mistake. He did not want to embarrass the king, so he lied. After a few moments, the king broke the silence. He said, "My dear sons, you are aware that I have grown old and will soon die. After my death, one of you will rule the kingdom." All 4 princes remained silent. They all secretly desired the king's throne. After a brief pause, the king continued, "But, as we all know, when the king dies, the princes begin to fight for the throne. This resulted in a lot of bloodsheds. Conflict erupts. Brothers murder brothers. Soldiers are killed, and innocent people suffer." As the king stopped, the first son said, "Our king, may you live a long and prosperous life. We guarantee that we will not fight. Your kingdom will be ruled by the most capable and deserving person. We have a strong bond as brothers. We are acquainted. We know what each of us is capable of, as well as what he desires." The king chuckled and said, "I admire your good intentions. I admire your affection for one another. But time will tell who is truthful and who is not." All the princes smiled. The king told the princes that he had decided to proclaim the new king during his lifetime. The princes looked at the king. They were amazed. But they did not know who the king wanted to make the next king. The king's servants brought him a red box. He opened it and took out a folded piece of paper. He unfolded and scanned the paper. He then looked at his sons and said, "I have decided to send you all to the old castle near the forest. You'll be there for a month. You will leave for the old castle tomorrow morning." "Father, why are you sending us there?" inquired the youngest prince. "You will know when the time comes," the king said. The princes returned to their homes. The king's horses and servants arrived early in the morning to take them to the old castle. It was a one-day journey. The princes arrived at the old castle the next morning. It was a huge castle. It was ancient and bleak, but noble and vast. The old man who lived in the nearby village and was their host for a month told them the castle's history. It was not always this quiet. It was built with stones 500 years ago. When the king died, the 7 princes competed for the throne. Unfortunately, they all ended up killing each other. The king and the queen had no brothers to rule the kingdom. The ministers then began to compete for the throne. The elites were at odds with one another. People were in pain. There had been no king for a year. The area was then hit by a drought. During the long drought, many people died of starvation. People began to leave their homes and settle on the fertile grounds. After another year, the entire kingdom was deserted. The once busy land soon fell silent. The princes went inside the castle. There was dirt inside. They tried to find a clean place to settle, but everything was covered in dust. The servants all left. Only the old man remained with them. They couldn't, however, ask an elderly man to do the cleaning. So they had to clean the space themselves. They cleaned some of the castle's areas together. The days flew by. But the princes had no idea what they were supposed to do here. After 5 days, the old man returned to his village. After a week, they realized they were out of food. Fruits and vegetables were rotting. The milk began to smell sour. The water was perfectly safe. They got worried. Their houses were too far away. On foot, it could take days to get there. They don't have enough food to make the trip. They thought that they should look for food. It was a tough time for them. There was no village nearby except for the village where the old man lived. But they did not know where the village was. The second prince recalled that the old man had moved to the east. They decided to travel east. They started out on foot. The road was clear. They arrived in a small village after a day's journey. They had some money with them. They ate at the hotel. However, they had no place to stay in the village. The third son asked one of the villagers about the old man's house. The villager told him about the old man's house. They all went to his house, only to discover that he had gone to his brother's house. He'd be back in 10 days. Now the princes were even more upset. They couldn't even afford to rent a room. For 2 days they slept and ate on road. On the 11th day, slave traders arrived in the village. They mistook the princes for homeless people when they saw them sitting on the road. When the third son saw the slave traders, he realized they were in danger. He told his brothers to run. They all got up and started running. The slave traders followed on horseback. They caught the eldest, the third, and the youngest prince. The second prince managed to escape. The 3 princes told the slave traders that they were princes and could not be enslaved. The slave traders laughed and told them to shut up. They searched for the second prince but couldn't find him. They stayed in the village for 1 day before departing for a nearby village. The second prince was so worried about his brothers. He asked the villagers about the slave traders. He inquired as to where they had come from and where they were going. The villagers told him that they knew nothing about the slave traders. They did, however, told him that the slave traders visit their village on the 10th or 12th of every month. The second prince chose to remain in the village. He started out as a gardener for a wealthy villager. Time passed, and the 10th of the following month arrived. He had forgotten about the king and his palace. He only cared about his brothers. When the slave traders arrived, the second prince went to their tents. He approached one of the men and told him that he was there to meet their boss. The man asked him who he was. The second prince told him that he worked for a wealthy villager. The man refused to let him meet with the boss. The second prince begged the man to allow him to see the boss. The man agreed on one condition. He said if he wanted to meet their boss, he had to cut one of his toes. After some deliberation, the second prince agreed. The man escorted him to his boss. The second prince told him he wanted his brothers back. He stated that he was willing to pay him any amount of money. The boss of the slave traders laughed and stated that he did not sell his brothers. He said he would sell him his brothers on one condition. The second prince, after a little hesitation, agreed. The condition was that he had to be their slave for a week. He had to dress and act like a slave. For 1 week the second prince lived as a slave. It was tough. He couldn't take the pain any longer. He had lived a life of a prince, not of a slave. But he was dead set on saving his brothers. On the 6th day, the slave traders blindfolded him. They took him to the king's palace. On reaching there, they removed his blindfold. The second prince saw his brothers standing in front of him in royal dresses. They were smiling. The king arrived. He welcomed the second prince inside. The servants served him delicious food. They dressed him nicely. The 3 princes informed him of what had occurred. The first prince said, "It was all planned by the king. The slave traders were ordered by the king to capture any 3 of us. You were left so you were to go through the test. You showed your brother's loyalty. My brother, the king, is very happy with you. He decided to make you the next king." The second prince was overjoyed to hear. He thanked the king and returned home. When the king died after 3 years, he ascended to the throne. He married the woman he liked and lived a happy life.